Ever since he was created in 1939 by Bob Kane and Bill Finger, Batman has become a pop culture icon with multiple appearances in both TV shows and movies. That being said, Batman's popularity has also reached into video games. Ever since the 1980s, numerous companies have tried to adapt the character into this playable medium. And to be honest, some of them have been great and others not so much. So this is the history of Batman in video games. If you enjoy our content, then make sure to subscribe to Evo Chronicles, and also leave a big thumbs up and a comment below. We really appreciate every kind of support. So what was his first game? Surprisingly, it was a 1986 European exclusive isometric game, simply titled Batman. This title was one of the first to introduce mid-game checkpoints when the player got to game over. So even back then, Batman games have been innovative. The game garnered good reception, with Crash giving it a rating of 93%. While this game did well at the release, it has fallen into obscurity since then. The title has a small fan base around it. An isometric puzzler is not the first genre that comes to mind when one thinks of Batman, but it was very well executed and left its mark on the industry even if it's not remembered to this day. In 1989, the world received the Tim Burton-directed Batman, his first big-budget motion picture. It is beloved by many fans of the character, and like many action movies of the time, got its fair share of tie-in games with the film. The first game to be released with the movies was also released by Ocean Software. It was a side-scroller, but also let Batman drive the Batmobile in some stages, which was the first game to do so. The game also had an interesting health bar, which showed Batman's face slowly turning into the Joker as he lost health. The title received critical acclaim, although the Commodore 64 version was reported to be buggier than the others. Animated series were also created when it debuted in the early 1990s. The first, which shared a name with the television show, was made by Konami for the Game Boy in 1993. While very basic due to system limitations, it introduced Robin as a playable character, and made it the first game to do so. Konami planned on porting the same game to the NES, but due to changes in the series name, it was completely redesigned to be the adventures of Batman and Robin. The SNES version was developed and published by Konami. This game received very poor response, as it was seen as generic and repetitive, along with being pretty difficult for the time. Once the SNES era ended, Batman, along with the games industry at the time, took the jump to 3D. Unfortunately, he did not find much success at first. Now we have the next title, based on the character. Batman Dark Tomorrow decided to change that and took more influence for Batman's comic roots. The game was developed by HotGen and published by Warner Bros. In 2003. While ambitious, the game was panned by critics due to difficult controls and awkward camera angles, and also a multitude of bugs. Luckily, after Batman Dark Tomorrow, Batman video games would get much better. This started with Batman's final movie tie-in game, Batman Begins in 2005. Developed by Eurocom and published by EA. This title let Batman intimidate enemies using both his gadgets and his environment, making it a much more authentic Batman experience. While its reception from critics was still somewhat mixed, it was much better than his previous games, and was the first in a long string of good Batman games to follow. Then, in 2008, Traveler's Tale released LEGO Batman, the first video game, the fourth game in their now dominant LEGO series. This title was like no Batman game before it. It was a simple puzzle platformer that featured a variety of characters from the Batman lore, and featured many different costumes that Batman and Robin could wear to gain different abilities. The game was both a critical and financial success, gaining positive reviews from critics and selling over 12 million copies by 2012. This was the title that put the LEGO game series on the map, so of course it was followed by two sequels. In 2012, LEGO Batman 2 DC Superheroes brought in many other characters from the DC universe as playable characters, and was adapted into an open world format. Another game series would begin in 2009 that would capture the darker Batman tone and become one of the best superhero games ever made. That game was Batman Arkham Asylum, released by Rocksteady Studios for PS3, Xbox 360 and PC in August 2009. It had been in development for about 2.5 years. This game had a lot of features, but maybe one of the most memorable is called Detective Mode, which Batman could use to see through walls, solve puzzles, and spot enemies. Batman Arkham Asylum was very innovative, and thus was met with great critical reception, and also was followed with 2 sequels and 2 prequels shortly after its release. Rocksteady followed up their last Batman game with the even more revolutionary Batman Arkham City in 2011. It combined Arkham Asylum's great gameplay with an open world, adding more gadgets to use and more villains to face, along with other minor improvements to gameplay. It was met with critical acclaim, scoring mostly 9s and 10s across the board. It was a great game for both open world and action-adventure games to follow. Even though Rocksteady would not return for the next entry in the series, they were sure to be there for the last game of the trilogy, with Batman Arkham Knight, which launched in 2015. On June 24, 2015, Batman Arkham Knight was released as the final installment of Rocksteady's series. After the mixed reception of both Origins game, many hoped the final game in this trilogy would be a return to form for the series, which would tie up the story and be one of the best Batman experiences of all time. It featured a controllable Batmobile that could be used throughout the map, which in itself was over 5 times the size of Arkham City's environment. While the game was received very well by many, it was criticized by many for its over-reliance on the Batmobile and its disappointing story. Batman Arkham Knight was not a bad game by any means, but it was a somewhat underwhelming supposed conclusion to the great franchise. As you can see, Batman has been a jack of all trades in video games, from isometric puzzle games to virtual reality experiences. So where can Batman go from here? Personally, whether Rocksteady develops it or not, I would like to see another game in the style of Arkham series that features some sort of co-op. It would be fun to roam the streets of Gotham with your friends while fighting criminals and solving mysteries. Batman has surely left his mark on the gaming industry, and it will be interesting to see which studio will work on it. So that was it for today's video, guys. If you enjoyed it, make sure to like, subscribe, and activate notifications so you don't miss out on any upcoming videos. And of course, make sure to watch our previous videos. There's a lot of them and you might enjoy them. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.